Well, what's going on, guys? I want to thank everybody for their recent support. The new subscribers, the old subscribers. I won't call you old, but the, uh, the subscribers that have stayed around. Want to thank everybody for their support. This channel is, bringing itself back up. It kind of rebounded about a year ago. I had to take down the videos that I gave to INE. We're trying to get back to where we were for that. This really isn't a technical breakdown video. It's more to answer a couple of questions that I received the other day regarding certification. And the question basically, the same person, two different people had the same question. And the question basically was, what is your process for whether it's certification or learning a new technology or, whatever. So, because I've already covered certification versus degree, what's your thoughts? What is the kind of the hierarchy to Cisco certification, and do you think it's possible? I absolutely think it is possible for anyone. You just have to commit to it. So I'm going to take a little bit of time as you see me working on a VMware lab. I actually just went out and bought a brand new server, and I am working on getting my VMware lab built back up. I want to dig back into VMware, do some NSX, some stuff like that. So that is what's going on. So when it comes to certification in general, you really have to kind of interview yourself, figure out what it is that you want to go do. Now, I typically, the way that I look at it is and I've said this before, in videos that I have recorded and I review them and I'm like, I scrap them. Other videos I'm like, yeah, that was full of some good information. I'll go ahead and send it up. I tend to interview myself and I look at what are the most common things that I'm getting asked to do. So for instance, a lot of you have asked for CCNP version 2 switch. I put it out there. Is there any interest in it? There was a lot. I haven't gotten around to that because of some personal business and whatnot. I do plan on doing that particular course. Just bear with me. There's a lot of other vendors that have got some good information out there that if you're waiting on me, don't wait around for me. I appreciate the thought, but go do what you got to do. But normally when I approach a certification, regardless if it's needed by the job or not, I set it as a personal goal. Regardless, it's always a personal goal. Because and the reason I set it as a personal goal is it's typically always, in my particular case, it's always something that I want to go learn anyway. So the way that I break this out is if I want to go learn VMware, I'm going to go learn VMware. No one's going to stop me. If I want to learn service provider, I'm going to go learn service provider. So usually the way that I do that is just that. So normally the way that I approach things is what do I find interesting, and what are the different ways that I can make it happen. So typically speaking, the way that I'll go about doing that is I will find the certification that I have some interest in, and I'll attack it. Whether that is VMware, Cisco, Microsoft. I don't have any Microsoft certifications, but I have an approach to how I go about that. So bear with me here. I'm just got to verify the interface IP address. This is static, so 40. Okay, that's what I need to type in because this guy's also the DNS server. So I've actually got to go to manage, and I've got to go to tools. Yes, tools. I got to create a user. So the way that I'm going about it right now for service provider is I'm learning service provider from the aspect of I've already know a lot about the service provider track, right? I spend a lot of time in service provider, so it's a natural understanding for me. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not so much learning service provider just to have the certification. It's to know the technology. So what I'll do is actually let me do this. Rob, excuse me. I started talking all of a sudden and I get the burps. But so I'll attack the program, I'll attack the certification based off of that. So I never expire, and there we go. So now I've created that, so there we go. So I should be able to log in. So now I'll be able to go back over here to vCenter, and I will be able to join the domain, domain, and then I'll be able to type in Riker.com. Actually, in a sidebar note while I'm talking about this, if you're trying to join a computer to a domain and you don't know if you've received an IP address from a different DHCP block or the DNS information that you receive from that DHCP request and that offer is different than the DNS you need, you'll have to manually configure it. So that's actually what I'm going to do right now. So most of you know that I'm after service provider, and I'm digging into it now. I've covered ISIS, I've covered BGP. I really don't have to cover those anymore because I've spent so much time in those particular protocols. But where I'm focusing now is I want to learn the high-level stuff of topic areas that I'm not as familiar with, like MPLS traffic engineering. And if you don't know what that is, it's actually a really cool technology where you can actually go in and you can engineer the MPLS core to handle different types of traffic and differently than the way that IGP would forward it. So it's actually really, really cool when you think about it. So the idea here is if I am going to be learning a new technology, I'm going to dig in and do that. Now if you haven't noticed my training style, I am very OCD about things, and that could be good and bad. But at the end of the day, it's how I go about approaching things and whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on OK. So this should signal out to the, there it goes, and I'll log in as Rob, and should be able to log in that way. And the idea here is if I'm going to attack that particular track, it's going to be for the reason of wanting to know the information, not necessarily for the go ahead and install VMware Tools while I'm here. And I will restart later. So I'm going to go ahead and install VMware Tools. So my approach now is I'm OCD when I learn things, so I dig into the documentation, and honestly there's not a lot of information out there on service provider. There is a friend of mine who recently passed his CCIE in service provider who's writing a book, and I just got an update from him last week, I think, that the book is it's completed. It's been completed for a while. It's in I believe it's wrapping up the technical review, and then hopefully by the end of this month, beginning of July, he should be able to have it out for publishing. So I'm hoping 4th of July or so, middle of next month, I'll get my hands on it. I'll be able to read through the book. It's a really good book. He's actually sent me some stuff on that. I verbally agreed that I would not share that information, so don't ask for it because I won't share it with you. But if you go out and and I won't tell you who the person is, I don't name drop unless they're already well known. So like if you Google CCA Service Provider version 4, lab, you should be able to find this person, and then you can go about it on your own if you have any interest in doing so. But I've got a topology that I'm going through, and I also want to teach the course. I want to teach, OSPF, ISIS, BGP, MPLS, multicast, quality service, all these different aspects. And I'm the type of person where I can't just not go after it. I've got to get up, I got to go do what I got to do and handle it. And it takes a while. Even though I'm pretty good with intra-autonomous systems, so MPLS VPN, where you're just peering to one provider and they do all your MPLS VPN routing. That's easy, right? That's easy to go about doing it. So the question to answer them specifically was, how do I approach it? And um, normally, because I have a CCIE, I have a different approach than most. When I was studying for my CCNA and my CCNP, I was okay with that. So I'm still doing that, right? But what I'm also doing is I'm committing roughly about 10 hours a week to service provider, and I could easily commit 20 or 30 if I really wanted to. But I'm also working on security and learning ASA and doing iOS VPN, things like that. But I'm not as much time as I am on service provider because I have a personal interest in service provider. I want to learn that track, but security is more like need to know for the job. Um, and I also am looking at doing some NSX training. Learning VMware's NSX. Kind of the reason why I'm building out this lab. It's actually the server name is vCenter. That's actually going to be the vCenter server. So it's got the horsepower already pre-built into it. I've done this so many times. It's relatively easy. The way I attack things is kind of the same approach that that INE uses. You get up at the 4-step approach where you have a structured approach for learning and troubleshooting and things like that. So you start off with learning the basics, then enforcing your understanding of the basics. So a great example of that would be here. Let me go ahead and, this is not official yet, so I am able to do this. Traffic engineering, in this case. This is the topology that I'm using right now. I don't know if it's actually good, if I'm going to keep it that or not. And one of the other questions that I had somebody ask me was, I've got some proof of concept testing I'm trying to do, and I want to be able to do it without having to have 70 routers. This guy's got like a massive DMVPN deployment that he's got to go do, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, I just don't want to have 70 individual routers. He's like, I want to be able to map it out and test it out, things like that. I was like, okay. And he's got half a dozen networks behind each one of those spokes, and wants to be able to do this and do that. So one of the things that I do when I'm doing my, especially for service provider stuff, and when I do anything that requires me to do proof of concept, I like to utilize the ESXi capabilities, so .1q trunking and things like that. So if you notice, I have R11S2, R11S1, R11S3. What I've done is I've taken router 11 and router 12, and I've VRF'd them out. And if you don't know what that means, I've taken a VRF and a virtual routing and forwarding. I've created another routing table. It's completely isolated from the global routing table. It's user defined. You give it a route distinguisher and a route target value. Now, Merry Christmas, there you go. And then I just do I put an interface inside of the VRF that is able to connect to another router. Now, what I'm able to do is, if you're looking at router 12, for instance, and do a show IP interface brief, gig 1.1213, 1223, 1236, 1245, 1256, 1269, these guys are all connecting to different, they're all connected to either to random routers here. So if we do a show run, anybody's gig 1.1213, this guy is, I have to place him back in the VRF, but they're all VRF'd. If we do a show VRF, well, there's nothing there at the moment. I have to reconfigure them. But I'm able to put each one of these interfaces in a different VRF. And basically what will end up happening is R12 will look like 6 individual routers from a logical perspective. So that's what I do. So I told him that. I said, just create a bunch. I said, see how many VRFs a virtual device will be able to support, and that'll be your limit. Do 2 or 3 of them. If your maximum is say 30 VRFs, you need to get 70 sites, do 3 routers, each one with 25 or 30 VRFs, and away you go. And then have your core, and you don't have to have 78 routers. You can do 10. Way less overhead. and then you're trunking and things like that. You're able to get the connectivity where you need it to be. So I just wanted to throw that out real quick. So R12 is actually 6 different sites, and the way that I've got it, I'm gonna have it planned out here, is I'm starting on intra autonomous system everything. So when I say that, my MPLS VPNs are going to be intra AS, my MPLS traffic engineering, my MPLS LDP testing, my quality of service, multicast, my L2 VPN. All that stuff is going to be a single autonomous system. And then I'm gonna, once I'm gone through that and I feel very, very comfortable where I can think, I can get stuff working quickly, then I'll start doing inter-autonomous system and how that works and what are the caveats. And then I'll have a dedicated section that'll be like, okay, we've already covered inter-AS, now we're going to cover inter-AS and carrier supporting carrier and all the other good things. If you notice, R8 is not directly connected to XR4, and that's so that XR3, when it leaves to go, let's say for instance, R11 site 2 needs to be able to talk to R11 site 4, or site 5, or what have you. It'll leave here and hit XR1, go to XR3, go to R8, then go to 9, then go to 10, to XR4, to router 5, to router 4, to XR5, to XR6, to site 5. So that's the general idea. So it'll be a really big horseshoe, if you will, but that's how I go about getting things done and moving forward and things like that. Now, this is how I go about doing it. I start off with a basic approach, and I take it from there. I learn the technology that I need to learn, and whatever it come out to be. And the very first thing that I do, though, is let me go ahead and bust out a whiteboard real quick for you guys. This is definitely a whiteboard session. Let me go ahead and tackle this real quick. Pardon me while I rearrange my desk a little bit for you guys. So we're going to go ahead and actually, one second here. I accidentally have to move my 1 second here, folks. I've got whenever I remote desktop in this particular computer, everything goes to the monitor that I'm not recording on. So I'm recording, I have my main monitor here, which is the one that my webcam is set up, and I have another monitor to my right, which is where I do all my stuff on. So I have to, okay, so I'm going to do, yes, apply, and okay. So now, there we go. So normally I do this. I don't ever try to put myself on a time frame for learning things, but I do give myself a guide to that. So like for instance, for those of you that are, so I'll start with CCNA, work my way down, or sorry, I should reverse that. CCNA, work my way up. So so CCNA, if I'm going to start it with a CCNA course, and I will always start with CCNA content. Okay, what I mean by that is, the technology that are listed on the blueprint, as well as the any associated labs, right? So I'll look at the labs, I'll look at the technologies on the blueprint, labs, things like that, any videos. That'll be my first step of checking it out. I'll make sure that I watch enough videos that I understand all the technologies that are on the blueprint, and then reinforce that understanding of those technologies on the blueprint by doing a bunch of labs on that. So whenever I see something on the blueprint, I start knocking it out step by step, right? And so I do that for CCNA, and then CCNP is the same way. Start doing that. Now CCNP, if you're doing RNS, is 3 exams. You have route, switch, and you have T-shoot. Pretty straightforward stuff. So that's pretty much where, if you're going to this place, that's a good stopping point for most people. I wouldn't recommend actually tackling CCIE unless you have an absolute reason to. CCIE is a significant undertaking, and you're looking at a year plus of just dedicated, committed studying to CCIE. So I'm never going to tell you not to go after it unless, if you want to go after it, be my guest. I'm not actually attacking a CCIE at the moment. I'm more focusing on CCNP for a couple different tracks. So what am I going after currently? Well, service provider, obviously. And then I'm also dabbling a little bit in security. And I will be doing wireless, and then I will also tackle data center. Now, the way that I'm going about this is service provider is my main focus right now. Just I'm a good portion of the way through the material, might as well just finish it. And then once I knock out service provider, here probably Labor Day, so a few months from now, um, I will start doing security. And then security, and the reason I say I'll start doing security is there's already material out online for security. So I'll start going through the material for security, start tackling that, learning VPN. I mean, I'm already pretty good with iOS VPN, but I want to go through all of the content for that. So normally what I'll do with security is I'll start with like the firewall, understand how firewalls work, the ACLs, all the module policy framework, things like that. Then I'll work my way into like VPN, and then whatever else there is to learn on that. I'm sure there's some ICE and some ACS and things like that. And once I get that knocked out, I'm waiting patiently for. I'll give a shout out to Jeff Rensink of Network Dojo. If you do look up for Network Dojo, you'll find him. He does all the wireless stuff. So I'm waiting for him to come out with content there. I know he's working on it, and he should be getting close to knocking out the videos in Workbook 1 for that. So I'm waiting for that to happen because I really want to do wireless. I think wireless is really, really cool. And data center, I've gone through most of Nexus. And one of the things that I was wanting to do for CCP version 2 switch is actually have a couple of Nexus switches available to me. And go through that. But there's a lot of significant drawbacks to doing that. There's so little capability on the data center technology-wise, so that would include VDC, VPC. Fabric Path will work from a control plane perspective. It'll form adjacency, things like that, but it won't be able to actually advertise MAC addresses and things like that. OTB, I haven't tested it out. You also have like the layer 2 stuff will work, trunking, that will work. I'm trying to think what else. There's quite a few things that will work that are applicable to the CCP version 2 switch, and I'll apply those where they're needed to be. And so I'm planning on going through these, not necessarily in this order, or dedicating a bunch of time to that specific area. But if you know me for any length of time, I'm trying to expand my knowledge rather than go deeper with it. And I'll start tackling, these certs as they come along, and I feel confident enough that I can pass the CCNP to each one of them. And that's one nice thing about CCIE is I don't have to take a CCNA course anymore. I can jump right into CCNP and go that route, which is what I plan on doing. And then I do plan on taking CCIEs in every one of these, so service provider, security, wireless, DC, stuff like that. I'm in no rush to get there. I get there when I get there, and that's that. We'll see how that how that pans out once I get to that point. I also plan on doing I'll throw one in here, the front DP, so design professional, and knocking out CCDE as well. I'm a little OCD with my studying, and so I obviously want to be a hardcore Cisco guy, right? So at the same point in time, I also want to do VCP NV and desktop. I think that would be really cool to start and knock out. I want to do the VCAP 5, 6 for data center virtualization, so the deploy and the design. And that's pretty much where I'm going to stop. I really don't do anything Microsoft-wise, so I don't really see a reason right now. And I've got my time frames out for learning this material. It's just a matter of going through the material. And one of the things that don't ask me who I work for if you know how to find that information out. I haven't actually posted it yet because I haven't officially started. I am no longer working in the service provider arena. I left the consulting world, and I went to go to work for a very large enterprise. So I had some personal reasons for that move, and not to say the consulting isn't for me, but the company that I was working for, and I had, it just wasn't working. So I have moved on, and I'm feeling way better about this opportunity. So we'll see how that plays out. One of the things that my new employer is looking to do is ACI and network virtualization, or NSX. So I'm going through NSX training, and I'm hoping to get my VCP and VCAP in that. I think that's extremely interesting stuff. Again, but it's just a matter of where do you place your time? Well, normally what I'll do is, again, I start with videos and curriculum based learning, because if you don't have a curriculum to follow, it's really hard to do. Now, a lot of vendors, including myself, when I do stuff for I&E, I follow the blueprint. Just go through the blueprint and hit all the topics and stuff like that. And based off the certification, that's where you stop. That's good for certification. But, like, for instance, with CCNP Service Provider, I'm not planning on doing CCNP Service Provider per se. I'm planning on doing like a Service Provider technology course where I talk about the technologies and I do a bunch of demos, but it's not a course that's geared to the CCNP level. It's geared to people of all levels. So if you're coming in and you need to know how to configure BGP on iOS XR, between both XR and iOS, there's going to be content on that. So I'm trying to take it from the perspective of, you know what you're doing or you don't know what you're doing. It's not going to be tied to a certification per se. Literally it won't be. It'll be learning how to configure BGP on XR and iOS XE, and once we have that piece under control, then we'll be that much better off to move into other topics. If you want to learn how to deal with hierarchical VPLS, there'll be content on that. It just it takes time to go through the material, and that's the only part of it that needs to be gone through and understood. So that is my current dilemma. I shouldn't say dilemma. That's my current undertaking, and I have a couple of other minor things that I want to go do. And part of the reason why I went out and I am doing this, so I'm going to go ahead and log back into this guy, is because of the fact that I need to go in and learn this material. And I'm of the type of person that when I learn something new, I need to learn it from the top or from the bottom up. And so for those of you that are not familiar with the exams here, I'll go ahead and take you out to this guy right here. Give it a second to pull up. If you look right here, I've actually got it bookmarked. If we come down here to the bottom here, for VCAP. Now, it's by invitation only, so it's not that big of a deal. But they have section 1, which is create and deploy vSphere 6 infrastructure components. So if I want to perform advanced ESXi host configuration, I'm going to expand this guy out here, and I need to do things like auto deploy and do scripted installs. Well, I've never done that before. I have no clue how to even begin to do it. The only thing I've ever done is interactive deployments. So that's going to be something that I'm going to have to go through the documentation and maybe trial by fire. As a matter of fact, the irony of this is I will show you an example of where I get things that I get hung up on. For instance, this right here. Let me go ahead and pull up Super Putty, and there it is right there. Let me give you an example here. R3. Go ahead and you all here. So if we look at here, we do a show MPLS forwarding table. You see that I have quite a verbose setup for MPLS. Now, the key factor here is that I'm running traffic engineering. If we do a show IP interface brief, I have a traffic engineering tunnel configured. That's why you can have the same IP address on 2 different interfaces. If we do a show run interface tunnel 313, you'll see that I'm unnumbered to loopback 0, which is that's my source, and my destination is XR3's loopback. Now the thing, this wasn't working for a long time. I was like, was it not supported on CSRs? Is it not supported on iOS XR? Like, what's going on here? Do I have to move everything to viral? What gives? So I'm sitting there and you're just normal Googling, and I was like, So here was the issue. I had all of this that I'm highlighting configured, right? This was all working just fine. I had the traffic engineering router ID loopback 0, so I was advertising the router ID inside of ISIS, and everything was working just fine in that regard. But it kept on giving me a bug, and I don't know if I can scroll back up here to it. It says right up here, it's working now. Right here. Perfect example of why stuff tends to break. It says activation failed, reason no path to satisfy tunnel constraints. Like, okay, what does that mean? So I was literally pulling my hair out. Now I'm not going to go through all like the back end stuff of what was actually happening here. What I didn't do that I was needed to do, and it wasn't like a verbatim, this is what you need to type in for ISIS. It was something that I saw in OSPF, where in OSPF you had to tell it where to run traffic engineering on what area. And I was like, well, I'm running level 1 ISIS everywhere in this service provider up here, so let's go ahead and try that on level 1. So I did on level 1, and all of a sudden I got this output right. Where'd it go? Right up here. Oh, too fast, too far. Where'd it go? Right. Oh, that's because it's. Of course. Let's see here. Where did it go? I was just over the top of it here a minute ago. Oh, right here. New path tail arrival event, RSVP tail end open, things like that. We're getting all these all this information. Actually, one second. Let's go back to the top here. That's not exactly what I saw. What I saw was right up here. So right here, we have that tunnel issue there. Come down just south of that, you'll see all this other information. This is what I was waiting for. The problem was that I wasn't advertising ISIS into the traffic engineering. So if we do a show run section ISIS, you'll see right here MPLS traffic engineering level 1. Well, it wasn't being advertised via IGP. So if we do a show run interface tunnel 313, you'll see right here that I have tunnel MPLS traffic engineering auto router announce, which basically says use IGP to propagate the information. And if you don't tell it to do that, it won't. And which is different than the forwarding adjacency, which actually advertises this guy as an LSP, but that's another video down the road. But I felt like I wanted to throw that in at the last minute. But this is how I go about my learning. I watch the videos, and I take notes. So most vendors will put together a what do you call it? A slide deck of some type, whether it's a PowerPoint, a PDF, whatever. They'll put something together for you to follow along on. And usually that's what I'll do, is I'll take their blueprint and I will start writing notes. And just to give you an idea, let me show you my notes right here. This is for, this is the videos that I have for INE video, or INE content that I've watched and gone through, and notes that I've taken and things like that. And this is the information that I've taken for, is it on here? Yes. This is what I've used for reading through the documentation. All this is documentation reading. Reading through the documentation, understanding what it is that's going on, how it works, what am I looking at, trying to understand the logic and the stuff like that. And that's most of the time, that's where you're going to spend the majority of your time, is understanding the logic behind something. So eventually I'll take all this information you see right here, and I will thin it out a little bit, and then I'll drop that into a bunch of PowerPoints. And then that PowerPoint will be what you guys get. And the whole point behind that, and the reason I went on this little tangent, was I don't want to show you guys a struggle that I can't figure out. I want to show you guys a struggle that I'm like, okay, this isn't working, any ideas why? And usually I'll focus on areas that I struggled on, so that it might, if you're struggling with it, you'll notice it. And you'll be like, oh, that's what I didn't do. And once I did it, we go over here to XR3 and we log in. You'll see what I mean. So we do a show MPLS traffic engineering tunnels. you'll see that everything's working quite well, and it's where I need to be. If I do topology instead, the topology is working as it needs to be, and my bandwidth reservations are where they need to be, things like that. So I'm in good shape at this point. So the point of this is, when you're doing your studies, you need to really be reinforcing what you're learning from a theoretical perspective, because traffic engineering at the end of the day really is only this. You and I want to move, let's go grab this guy. Make this a bit bigger. By default, your LSPs, your label switch paths, will follow the IGP shortest path tree. In this case, I'm running ISIS here, so it'll go from XR3 to R3, right? That'll be your LSP. Now, if this interface goes down, then you're going to reroute up here to this location. That's usually how you're going to forward your traffic, right? That's just IGP reconverging. Now, that's all well and good. That works out just fine. Now, with traffic engineering, you can do the same thing. You can have this primary path as a TE tunnel, right? This guy's working this way. You can also have a TE tunnel going this direction. And you can also have one going this direction. So typically when you have multiple TE tunnels configured, you're going to use this one as your first path. This one will be number 2, and this one will be number 3. This is commonly what they refer to as fast reroute, which means you've already got a pre-calculated backup path. Excuse me. In this case, 2 of them. So in case this link goes down, great, no problem, I'm covered. In case this link goes down, good, I'm covered, I can go back over this one. Now you might say, well, Rob, what happens if this link goes down? Well, you're pretty much screwed. So hopefully that if this link goes down, there's another traffic pattern that you can follow. I plan on going into detail on how this works. Again, the course that I'm looking to produce for a service provider is fairly involved, and it will take some time to develop. I'm still going through the material. So I could hurry up and wait to where I go and knock out OSPF, ISIS. There's some IPv6 that I need to knock out first so that I can bring you guys up to speed. But there's the service provider stuff that really needs to be understood. Intra-AS, I still need to do QoS in the MPLS core, and multicasters. I've never dealt with multicast with MPLS before. So those are areas that I need to bring myself up on before I can, go out there, create a bunch of content and go, okay, we're going to go out here and do this. And I'm like, I hope to God this works. I don't want to do that anymore. I did that a lot when I was doing video recordings on YouTube before they went to INE. And you can tell when I would hit a roadblock, I'd be like, I have no idea. I am completely lost as to what I need to be able to do here. But that also helped me understand myself better. What's a better approach to learning and stuff like that. So I have a couple of little courses that I need to produce for INE before I do that, and which is actually good for me because it'll give me a little bit of a break. And I'm trying to, I want to commit to this, but there's just a lot of information to learn. Now, one of the things that's funny is a buddy of mine, he went out, he took SPv3 a while back. He passed it. And a buddy of ours, a mutual friend, passes SPLab version 4. And the SPv4 guys that have passed basically told me that SPv4 compared to SPv3, it's like night and day. SPv4 is way more involved, way more complicated, and heavily focused on L3 VPN, and from what I've gathered, SPv4 is more focused on BGP, and like you can do VPLS with BGP auto discovery and all kinds of other fancy capabilities. So there's going to be a lot of focus on those areas. So my best advice to you, if regardless of what level you're at, CCNA, CCIE, and anywhere in between, you got to read the documentation. Read the documentation and lab it up. My best advice, if you're going to be moving forward here, hang on one second for me. You've got to go through the documentation and read it. So this is the command reference. If we go, give me 1 second here. Let me open up the configuration guide for XE, and that is MPLS. So in this case here, I have path protect, path setup, and diff serve. Go ahead and open those guys up. they opened up on the other screen. So if you give me 1 second here, this is path setup right here. So in this case here, this is path setup. So if you really want to learn how, go ahead and just move this over here. My computer is like saying no. There we go. So you really have to read through this. Now it's only it's only a few hundred pages, really. You don't really have to read into super deep detail, but you know it's still important to understand like the 40 adjacency. What's that used for? What are inter-area tunnels and why would you use them? You know, stuff like that. So go through here, read the information about what the inter-area tunnels are. You know, in this case here, they're talking about OSPF and you know, ISIS and stuff like that, because you can run inter-area with both, and you know how you would handle that, and then you know some of the differences between them. And now, granted, we're not going to be able to do bundled interfaces because, well, actually we could, but unfortunately with the connections, I don't think you can do a port channel on trunking links, .1Q tunnel, .1Q trunks in CSR. I could be wrong, but I don't think you can. So those are those attributes. So once I go through the bulk of this, and then I start looking at it from an iOS XR perspective, then I can start building out my content. And because, like I said, this is fairly involved. Same thing with BGP. You know, I've added a lot of BGP features of what I already know about iOS, but those are things that need to be understood and gone through. Because if you don't know what you're talking about or don't know what you're looking at, you can get yourself in trouble. So that's the motivation behind that. And then I have multicast QoS, which QoS is just going to be isn't going to be super complicated and super deep. I don't know what's supported yet because I haven't gone through it. But there's multiple aspects to how you would handle that. So it'll take me quite a while to go through this material before I can actually build out that setup. But it's going to be a lot of fun for me. I actually really enjoy doing this stuff. So yeah, it's all good in the hood. Beyond that, I'd like to thank everybody for the continued support and me listening to me ramble for stuff. But going back to my original point way back at the beginning of this video, you got to commit to something. And if you're, I never, you know, it's hard for me to say commit to something when I haven't really committed to something. I have committed to a few things, but I'm not in any rush to get certified. I am in a continuous, motivated position to learn the material to become the expert that I want to become. And to me, that is where you really need to focus your efforts. But I bid you good luck on anything you guys go after. I'm sure you'll have no problem knocking it out. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, you know, anything you'd like to add, you know, feel free to throw it in the description below, or I'm sorry, in the comments below. You know, I try to be as open-minded as I can and never limit what you guys can do, because, you know, if I get past the CCIE, so can you. You know, I know people say that if I can lose 100 pounds, so can you. You have to have the drive. At the end of the day, there's a term or saying here that I like to use. It's you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So I can create a bunch of content for you guys. You know, whether it goes to INE or it goes to YouTube, and if that content is, you know, I try to produce it the best I can, and then pass it off to you guys. If the content's there, like all you literally have to do is sit there and watch the video. But if you don't want to do that, then so be it. You can get to my channel but not watch the video. That's on you. I won't hold it against you, but don't. I've had people complain that there's so much content, this, that, or the other, and or the video sucks or what have you. And it's just like, well, you know, I really don't care if it's a negative comment. I really don't care unless it's like, you know, this is good, but this could be better. You know, this it may be something that I'm missing, or you know, what have you. Try to don't degrade anything. Try to be positive. For those of you that are native U.S. speakers or native English speakers, I'm sure you've heard the term constructive criticism. So don't bash me for something that I say. You know, if you know better than I do, hey, say it. Let me know, because I'm always, I listen to feedback. You know, if I didn't, I wouldn't be very good at what I do. And actually, now that I think about that, it actually jogged my memory. When I was going through the interview process for the position that I currently have, I was asked, what is your first 30 to 60 days look like? And this is a really big company, really big network, and bigger than anything I've ever touched, service providers included. Um, I said, really, it's just observing, because the last thing I want to do is come off the street and, you know, act like I know everything, because I don't. You know, I'll be the first to admit it. I don't know everything, and so I try to keep that level of humility so that when I'm, you know, working with a customer or I'm working with a coworker, we can work together on it. So um, that's pretty much where it boils down to. It's I did that when I first got into the industry. You know, like, you're doing things wrong. There could be half a dozen ways to do it. I just chose that way, and there was I had a former manager say, well, this guy said it was the right way to do it. And I'm like, well, there's no right way to do it. There's just the way that there's different ways to do it, and basically it needs to be done in the way that solves whatever issue you might be having. So, you know, uh, I see a lot of people using access lists as filtering um, for route, like when they deal with route redistribution, and I'm like, don't do that. If you're going to be trying to match on like a tag, sure, that's in the data plane. ACLs are data plane. Prefix list is in the control plane. So like if I'm going to be filtering routes, I'm going to use a prefix list to match on a prefix in the length. You don't actually match on the prefix in the length with an access list. You're matching on the data plane, the source and destination IP addresses, and how much of that you're actually going to pay attention to. So an ACL belongs in filtering out web traffic or FTP or DSCP values. Or if I'm trying to filter a /16 block from getting into this particular network, I'm going to use a prefix list to do that. Or if I need to allow a portion of this but not a portion of that, I'm going to use a prefix list to match a certain aspect of something. And if it's a data plane aspect of something that I need to block, I'm going to use an ACL to do that. So I find that, and it's a wrong filtering technique. If it gets the job done, sure. If I've been asked to take a look at that, and you know, maybe, or if I ask and say, well, how come you guys use an ACL for that? What was the reason behind it? Even though I could look at the config and probably figure it out, is I'm like, well, there must have been a motivation behind it that I don't know. And the gentlemen that I'm going to be working with have been doing, have been in their roles as engineers as long as I have been alive, and longer than I've been alive. So you don't want to come off the street and act like you know more than they do. You may technically know how BGP works better than they do, but that's one thing. It's coming off the street and telling them that their deployment's wrong. You don't do that unless you've been asked to do so, and that's the reason you're there. But when you're working with them, and you're, you know, working for the same company and stuff like that, you don't come off like that. It's kind of like it's arrogant. It's disrespectful, because you have to show them, you know, you're the new guy. You know, even if you have 15 years of experience, you're the new guy. You know, you don't want to come off like a jerk and say, you know, well, you don't know what you're doing. Because sometimes they know more than you do. I've worked with engineers that are not certified at all, have no certifications, have no desire to have any certifications, and they can dance circles around me. You know, I consider myself to be pretty good, but like I mentioned, I don't know everything. I haven't seen everything. There's no way I could possibly see everything. So keep that in the back of your mind. Until next time, guys, take it easy.